I can't believe we've made it to the last week of August. And for a large portion of my life, that meant it was just about time to head back to school. In fact, I got a Facebook Memories notification today that 10 years ago today, I was packing up my car to head to Barnard for my senior year of college. Oh my God, that is so crazy. And it got me thinking, why should back to school only apply to kids or students? I'm kind of ready to refresh a few areas of my life as we head into September. And if you're in the mood to start the last few months of the year on a high note, grab your favorite beverage and pretend it's syllabus week for adults, because today I want to share how we can apply the back to school mindset to our own adult lives, but with more fun and fewer word problems. Before we get into the topic of this week's episode, let's do a little create and consume. So, in terms of what I've been creating this past week, it's something that you haven't seen shared publicly. It has actually been a couple of pitch decks for brands that I've been creating in Canva. And I forgot how much I love doing this. Creating anything in Canva, first of all, is always like the most fun time ever for me because it feels like I'm in the lab. I get to like mix and match colors. If I get something wrong, I can like instantly fix it and drag and drop it with the touch of a button. So that is always a fun way to create pitches. And I feel like it's so much more engaging visually to make these fun little pitch decks. So I do this in Canva presentations. And at this point, I essentially have my own template for what I want the pitch decks to look like, but you could easily find templates on Canva. There are like literally thousands. And so, anyway, I used Canva to create two pitch decks for two brands that I absolutely love. One that I've actually worked with before, and one that was like a dream brand partner of mine. And I got approved for the dream brand partner one. And I'm in discussions now for the one that I have worked with in the past. So, the fact that I was able to use these pitch decks, which basically consist of visuals of what my content looks like. I include a lot of logos of previous brand partners. Sometimes I'll link to a specific example of what I think our collaboration could look like to say, hey, here's a similar video that I made for this brand. Like, this is kind of what I'm thinking for ours. And then I like to list out like all the details. So if it's an Instagram reel, how long is it going to be? Is it going to be shot talking to camera? Is it going to be shot B-roll versus voiceover? All of those little details I like to show up with a fully formed idea essentially for a brand, but not with so many details that they could like take my idea and run away with it to someone else, if that makes sense. I like to make the idea so specific to me and my audience that the brand couldn't just like copy and paste it with someone else. And I want to give enough detail to help them visualize what would working together look like. And I absolutely love making these. I kind of am like newly motivated to pitch, which is great because we're heading into holiday, which is typically a highly profitable time for content creators. It's the time of the year where brands put a lot of their budget and try to get all of their end of year ad spend out. So it is a really exciting time. And the fact that I've had two brands, like two for two, at least like reply, and one that I'm already like locked in for a contract with has just been really encouraging. So that's what I've been creating this week. Probably nothing that you'll ever actually see, but I did just want to share that behind the scenes portion of what I'm creating. And I've been struggling a little bit to keep up with like Instagram and TikTok right now. There's just so much that is kind of going on behind the scenes at the moment, but I'm really excited to share more about that next month and keep you guys in the loop of all of the things going on. And speaking of that, in terms of what I'm consuming, I mean, I'm consuming The Summer I Turned Pretty, but like, honestly, that could be a whole separate podcast episode. If you didn't get a chance to catch my latest vlog, you can see me live react to episode 7, which was an emotional roller coaster. Episode 8 should be out by the time that this episode is live. But to kind of bring it back to school for a minute here, I wanted to talk about a book, and I actually realized that I didn't talk about this book yet, but it feels like I read it so long ago at this point. I've been very slow getting into my next book. I feel like it's just been a slog for some reason. Like when I get off my reading rhythm, I really do get off of it. But I did read Bad Summer People by Emma Rosenblum. And if you guys listened to the 2025 TBR episode that I did, what I wanted to read this year, that book was mentioned in it. So I did finally check it off my list. I kind of flew through this one, honestly. It's like a rich person's multi POV mystery. It's giving a little bit of Ellen Hildebrand, but this book actually took place on Fire Island, New York. Now, I have actually never been to Fire Island before. You can take a ferry to Fire Island from the city. I know that the gay community loves Fire Island Pines. I know that that's like a summer hotspot for them. And then apparently the rest of Fire Island, though, has more like suburban neighborhoods and stuff. So this book took place in one of those. It was called Salcombe. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I didn't even look up if that's a real place or not. It very well could be. Upon a quick Google search, I'm starting to think that it is fictional. But anyway, it was also a little bit like White Lotus-y in nature. Like you are listening to a lot of the stories and you're just like, oh, these are like spoiled rich people who think they can get away with anything. And I was totally like surprised by the end. I was not expecting who the victim was. It starts out with a body is discovered, just, and it doesn't say who. And I also could not have predicted the strange series of events that like led up to that point. But I think it is for fans of Ellen Hildebrand or fans of The White Lotus. I would definitely recommend picking this one up. And it's from a few years back, so I feel like it should be easily requestable at your local library, which we love. Let's get into today's topic of back to school for adults. And I want to preface this by saying when I graduated college in 2016, I was feeling like that was the cap on my school journey personally. Like, I had friends who were getting ready to go to some master's programs, friends who ultimately went to medical school, law school, business school. And I was just craving, like, I was so ready for real world experience at that point in my life. I was like, I can't imagine taking one more test, can't imagine going back to school as much as I loved especially college, living with all of my friends and getting to learn basically 24/7 and having such great access to education. I think that my education is probably like one of the top 3 things in my life that I am the most grateful for. I feel like I got an incredible education. I feel like throughout like my schooling journey, I was always exposed to like new ideas, really balanced ways of looking at things, like really nuanced ways of understanding complicated topics. And I feel like I am the person that I am today because of the education that I got in my early years of life, all the way up through my college graduation. And even though I really, really enjoyed school, like when I graduated, I was ready to work. I was ready to like jump into the real world. Like I said, could not imagine sitting down to take one more standardized test or hand in one more homework assignment or, God forbid, work on one more group project. I think we all can recall a time where a group project almost led to our downfall. And at least these days, if I'm working on a group project, I get to pick and choose who that group is. I get to pick and choose who I'm working with in terms of members of my own team, in terms of brand partners. Oh my God, there's so much more control in my life now that I'm obviously grateful for in that regard. But now at 30, I am not like looking to go back to school in terms of actually applying to any programs or doing anything like that. But I am definitely nostalgic for a time where my only job was to like show up and learn. That in many ways is a luxury that I did not necessarily realize was a luxury at the time. That is just something that I continue to think about as I get older. And I think that is why I wanted to first introduce this episode by talking about the idea of being a lifelong learner and someone who seeks out ways to learn new information and who is interested in new topics and continues to feed their brains in a way that goes beyond just school and goes beyond just the walls of a classroom, whether they are digital metaphorical walls, as many people had to experience during COVID, or whether it is an actual physical classroom. And I feel like everybody should embrace the idea of being a lifelong learner. And the beauty of being an adult after you have gone through school is that you can then become a lifelong learner about things that genuinely interest you. And it could be something so small that sets off your curiosity about something. And it could be a singular moment, or it could be something that you actually start to invest much more time and even maybe resources into learning about. It could truly be about anything. It could be about cars. It could be about succulents. It could be about urban planning. It could be about interior design. Like, the world is our oyster. And the fact that we live in this digital era where all of this information is readily available for us whenever and wherever we want it is such an incredible privilege. And when I think of myself as a lifelong learner and when I talk about being a lifelong learner, I think that that means even embracing like little moments of curiosity throughout your life And it could be something so small, or it could be something that becomes really substantial and that you do end up pursuing a degree in or taking a class in. In terms of small moments, I'll give you like a silly example from earlier this week that was maybe like an hour long learning pilgrimage for me. So, Andrew and I were watching the new season of Hard Knocks, which, if you're not a sports girly, is a HBO sports documentary that they do where they follow one NFL team, and they've done a few different iterations of this. They did one on the Giants during their offseason, which was very interesting to watch as a Giants fan. They've done like one on a couple of different teams in one particular division while they're actually in season. And this year they did the Buffalo Bills training camp. Now, one of the things that came up in the first episode was that the Buffalo Bills, and I didn't know this, actually go away to camp for 2.5 weeks. Most people do training camp at a training facility near the stadium that they typically play at. So that means that they can sleep in their own beds, they wake up, they go, and then they come home and like still have their own routine. I found it really fascinating that the Buffalo Bills actually go away for 2 weeks, and they actually go to a university in Rochester and they stay in the dorms. Like, they are eating, sleeping, and breathing football for the 2.5 weeks of training camp. And I was so fascinated by that. I hadn't actually heard of any teams doing that before, or just as a, football fan, I wasn't aware that some teams did that. So I was asking Andrew, I was like, is this a common thing? Like, how many teams actually do this? And we ended up looking into it and just kind of went down like a mini rabbit hole. And again, this is nothing high stakes. I'm not discovering gravity or curing diseases, but I suddenly just got very interested in this. Like, it piqued my curiosity, and we went down this whole little rabbit hole. And it turns out that 6 teams spend the entirety of their training camp away from their typical facilities. So the Buffalo Bills are one team, Dallas Cowboys, Indianapolis Colts, Kansas City Chiefs, Los Angeles Rams, and then the Pittsburgh Steelers. I was like, that's pretty interesting, because maybe the Colts aside, no offense to the Colts, those are really high performing teams. And the fact that they spend training camp fully locked in, like, they're there and they sleep there and they wake up there, and that is their life for 2.5 weeks. I was like, I think that would make me more in sync with my team and more motivated and focused as well. And obviously, like, not everyone wants to do that. If you had the option, you'd probably want to go sleep in your own bed at the end of the night. But I think there's something to be said for the fact that like those are high performing teams who really take the time to like go in and focus on that. So I kind of think I'm going to watch games this year differently, at least the early season games, and think about that as I see how the teams are in sync with one another and how connected they are, because that is such a unique opportunity to almost like go away. And especially the fact that they stay at a university, I found really interesting. So that's one like very minor example, right? But then to go into an example that for me personally is something that I've taken beyond just like casual, oh, let me spend like 30 minutes to 45 minutes Googling this, which is the topic of reality television, right? This was not really a class that I took in school. I did take one media and communications class at Muhlenberg before I transferred to Barnard that had a heavy focus on reality TV. So actually, shout out to my professor for that class because it was really fun. But I am just fascinated by like the psychology of reality TV, how it relates and connects to social media. You guys know I've done 2 podcast episodes on this topic already, and that is a result of me just being genuinely curious about the nature of reality TV and how we as a society react to reality television, to the point where now I've read Cue the Sun, which is like a history of reality TV. I listen to 3 to 4 usually weekly podcasts that discuss reality television and the psychology and the social dynamics behind it. And I am a watcher of tons of different reality shows now. Bachelor franchise, Love Island franchise, Love is Blind, The Traitors. I've always been a fan of The Amazing Race. Like, that is something that I now put a heavy amount of time into in a given week or month, just because I am so interested in it and I love learning more about it, and I love comparing and contrasting the different seasons. And again, is this rocket science? I'm very aware that it's not. But the fact that it's something that I'm interested in and I like learning about, I think speaks to this idea of being a lifelong learner and just always finding ways to be curious about things in and around your own life. I think it also just ties back into growth, right? Like, we as people are always growing. We're always learning new things about ourselves, new ways to communicate, learning new skills. I just think that being curious and also being skeptical and learning how to like read people, read media, and just intake all of this different information that we're constantly being fed is such a skill that cannot be overstated how important it is. And it can really help you in both personal fulfillment, can help you in career growth, and it can also help you with not getting duped by fake AI videos that are circulating on TikTok. You know what I mean? We have really regressed with media literacy, it feels like sometimes, but I feel like even just having this attitude about it, just like questioning things, double checking sources, being a smart consumer, can all really go a long way. Okay, so that was obviously a ton of stuff right up at the top, but let's move into some more fun components of the back to school vibes as an adult. And I think the first one is upgrading your school supplies. For me, I just remember like Staples hated to see me coming. We would get that list at the beginning of the year of all the things that they suggested that we get, those 3-ring binders. And then, like, how are we going to decorate the binders? Like, oh, book covers for our textbooks. That was such a specific moment in time. Even creating like DIY covers with like the grocery store bags. Oh my God. There was just so much. There was something really exciting about just like getting in fresh pencils, getting in that new supplies that honestly made a bigger difference than you might think in terms of mindset. And I think there's something to be said about bringing that perspective into your own adult life. Because if you think about it, at the start of the year, we're trying to like refresh everything and get started on the right foot. Then we have spring cleaning. And then in August and September, I really feel like back to school is another kind of checkpoint for us to say, like, is there stuff around me that I'm holding on to that's not actually working right now? Or is there something I could get that could make my life easier or more streamlined? Like, is there some other way to upgrade my equipment, my supplies, whatever it is, to make this as easy as possible, to make my day to day as smooth as possible, and to help me produce the best work that I can. One example for me that actually happened last year was my AirPods were just kind of getting so like crusty and staticky, and they were dying so often. And I am pretty much glued to my AirPods. I wear them for a good amount of the day. Anytime I leave the apartment to go on a walk, I feel like I have them with me. Whenever Andrew and I are working from home together, I always have them in, like listening to music so that I can really zone into my own work. And I just remember being like complaining about them so much. And it was like, for the amount of time that I use these things and how dependent I am on them, why would I not just get the newest version of the AirPods that's like brand new, that holds a charge really well? I think mine hold a charge for like usually 6 or 7 hours. Like if I bring them on a cross country flight, I feel like I am pretty good. I'm covered throughout the flight, which is amazing. And so I upgraded my AirPods and almost everything felt easier. So maybe there's just one of those things in your life, like, well, one thing in our current apartment that drives me nuts is like all of the wires that hang down from our desks. And it's like, I actually already have the wire cover box. Like I can literally see it. It's just like not with any of the wires where it should be. But I could easily just set aside 5 minutes to organize all the wires, put them all inside the box, and everything would look much more visually clean. Or maybe it's just been a really long time since you last got a brand new like 12 pack of fresh socks and got rid of the ones that are the grimiest or that have holes in them or whatever it is. Or if you want to get some fresh new office supplies too. I mean, I am always a sucker for a new notebook. I actually got this one that I'm holding up if you're watching on YouTube from a workshop that CoverGirl did in the spring, and it's really nice. I definitely want to be like writing in it more. And even just like the fun little things in and around your desk. Like I got cute folders with flowers on them for my file cabinet. Like I could have just gotten plain black folders, but no, I wanted these because they have flowers on them. Also, I have this little digital timer if you're watching on YouTube, and I use that to time batch tasks. Like that's something that does help me get through things that maybe I am putting off or that I think are going to take a long time. And then if I set the timer for 10 minutes, 9 times out of 10, I'm done before the timer actually goes off. But I won't sit here and list every single thing that is within my reach right now. I actually do have a desk tour on YouTube that I filmed last year, so I can link that in the show notes if you want to watch that. I go very in depth there about everything on my desk. So if you are also a content creator, you might get some good inspiration from that. I think another piece of the back to school experience that we lose after we graduate is the idea of picking out your first day of school outfit. And I think that August, September is an amazing time to just refresh your wardrobe. I also think that even envisioning what your first day of school outfit would be as an adult, essentially having a go to outfit that you know when you walk in the room, you're going to feel good in, you're going to put your best foot forward, and people are going to see you and feel that you're confident and feel that you're happy in how you look and what you're wearing. I don't know. For me, I just love the idea of picking out like what would be the first day of school outfit that's something that feels like you, that's presentable, and that you can have on hand if you need to like feel good and confident kind of at a moment's notice. Maybe you get invited on a first date and you want something that you just know you're going to feel confident in. For me, I have a lot of like last minute events and things that pop up, so it's nice to know that I have a couple of go-to outfits that if I can make something work at a moment's notice, I can be there and don't have to worry or stress about what I'm going to wear. Maybe you're even going to get new headshots done for your website or at work, and you just want something that you know will look good and feel good on camera, almost like a picture day kind of vibe. Instead of calling it a first day of school outfit, think of it just as your go to outfit that you can show up in and feel good. I honestly love the idea of this. I'm trying to think if I had to pick right now what mine would be, and I feel like it would probably be my Abercrombie wide leg jeans. I just absolutely love those and I feel good in them. And then probably some kind of like cream or lacy top, like what I'm wearing right now. And then a comfortable pair of shoes, maybe my flats from Dolce Vita that are red, kind of like Mary Jane style. Again, is it like the craziest outfit in the world? Is it the best outfit I've ever worn? I mean, I guess that's all subjective, but really what it is just something I know I could pull out of my closet. Like, I'm making this up, but say like one of my dream brand partners was like, "Hey, we're in Hoboken today and we're popping up at this store between 2 and 4. Like, would love if you could stop by." To know that I would have that outfit that I just explained to jump into and get over there without really having to think about it is just such an easy thing to have on hand. And it would make me say yes to an opportunity that if I was overwhelmed and didn't have something like that in my back pocket to go, "Oh, I don't know, what would I even wear? Like, I don't even feel like," it just eliminates a lot of that and allows me to think less and stress less about that and go out and actually like live more life. Now, if you're in need of a mini fall wardrobe refresh, I mean, I actually do kind of want to do a whole episode about fall fashion, but if I could suggest a couple of things to keep on hand, maybe buy an extra pair of your favorite jeans. The Abercrombie jeans that I just mentioned, I already own in both blue and black. I would even honestly get a third, maybe like totally different shade of blue to have on hand because they are so versatile and I style them quite often, especially like as we get into the winter months. Maybe adding just a few more simple tops for layering, maybe some kind of transitional weather pieces. I don't actually love that term because it implies that you only wear stuff for like 6 months out of the year, but I even love like my puffer vest that I got 2 or 3 years ago now. I feel like I style that quite a lot throughout like September and October. Or maybe you have a favorite pair of sneakers that you've worn into the ground and you want to treat yourself to a new pair of them. I also love leaning into more textures as we get into fall and winter. I feel like this is where different fabric types can really shine. So thinking about kind of more elevated fabrics like leather or suede. I also love velvet for fall and obviously all the different knitwear. Like there's so many different materials to choose from when it comes to knits. Also, if you're kind of lost on your closet or you're like, "I just don't know if I'm like making the most out of this right now." I ended up doing a color analysis last year with my friend Sarah. I actually vlogged that whole process on YouTube, so I can link that video in the show notes if you haven't seen it yet. But you can watch me at least get my color analysis done. And I think you'll see like that video's from almost a year ago now. I feel like I really have embraced what I was told in that session and have been leaning more into my color season, which is dark autumn, if you're wondering. And it just gave me a lot of information about what naturally complements me. And again, it doesn't mean I can't ever wear certain colors or if I see something that I can't like put it on, but it just really helped simplify everything. And it has gotten me to the point where I feel a lot more intentional now when I do go shopping that I am going to find things that work with other pieces in my closet and that also really complement my natural features. So I would definitely think about looking into getting your colors done. I would strongly recommend working with someone like Sarah, who actually has studied color theory and who has a master's in arts. However, if you're on a budget or you need a little quick fix, I mean, you could always ask your favorite AI assistant. Another thing I always loved about going back to school was getting back into a routine. And, for the most part in our adult lives, we do have some sense of routine with our lives. But even this past summer, like there were a bunch of weekends where I was away back and forth between places. And it always feels really good to me as a September baby and a Virgo as well, I will say, to like kind of almost restart my year at the beginning of September and really like settle into a new routine. One thing that I've kind of been unintentionally doing in the last week, and I feel like this is actually a tip from like work from home lockdown COVID era, is to simulate your commute, even if that literally means just like taking a lap around your block, or whether you can actually go out for coffee, or maybe you could take a workout class, something to really stimulate your brain and just get you going at the beginning of the day and create a tiny bit of separation between work from home, especially if you do work from home. If you actually do commute to an office, then obviously you don't have to stimulate anything. You just go to work, and that's all well and good too. There have been some days in my work from home era where I get up, I make my coffee, but then I like just get pulled over to my desk like a little magnet, and then it's 4 p.m. and I haven't even left the apartment. And that's just not what we used to do. I used to leave my apartment every day at the same time, go to an office. And I feel like since in the last week, I've actually been getting out for a few minutes in the morning. It's definitely made a difference. I think it's also a good idea to kind of plan out your lunches. So even if you work somewhere where you purchase lunch out or you get lunch at work, even thinking about like what are the options for the day? What am I going to get? Or if you work from home or you bring your own meals from home to work, just planning out like what am I having on these various days. It is going to save time throughout the week. You're probably also going to save money on groceries and food prep. And you can also like treat yourself to a fun lunch every once in a while too. One thing that I haven't done it in a while, I should probably do this soon, have done when Andrew and I are both working from home, is to make almost like fancy deli sandwiches, like sandwiches that I would normally buy out at the deli, but making them at home and being able to control exactly what the portions are, exactly what ingredients I want in it, all of that kind of stuff is so satisfying once you learn how to do it. And I think that outside of work, it's important to take the time to make sure that you have time for your hobbies or to see your friends. I feel like for me, I've got a good mix of stuff. Obviously, with work events, I'm often in and out of the city, like in the evenings. Our book club usually meets once a month. So that's kind of like guaranteed time to get to see friends. And I usually try to get dinner with a friend or someone in the industry like once every 2 weeks. So that has been a really good cadence for me to get that extra socialization in. To get that extra socialization in, and even just like befriending people who work at the local coffee shops and people in my neighborhood, so that when I'm bopping around, I can at least like see a friendly face, even if we don't have time to go get a coffee together or spend an hour chatting, like even just to say hi and have that community and that recognition, especially if you work from home or you work for yourself, I think is really important. And if you need any help with scheduling or planning or goal setting, I do have some YouTube videos that I can link in the show notes. And then I also sell my Notion goals and planning template. You can jump into this template at any point. It has calendars set up for January through December, but like you could absolutely jump in and start in August if you want. This is personally the way that I stay organized and run my entire business. So this is where I'm able to set goals for each month, each quarter, and obviously for the whole year at large, and where I'm able to have to-do lists all in one place next to my goals so that it's all correlated and I'm scheduling in things that will actually like help me achieve my goals, so that I'm not sitting there in December going, oh, I didn't really like do that thing that I wanted to do this year. If you need any help in that regard, I've been using this system for, I guess, 2.5 years now, which is crazy. And it's been working really well for me. So I can definitely link that in the show notes too. Naturally, when I sat down to write the outline for this episode, I wanted to talk about learning. And I think that more so than just learning, it really is more about what we're kind of consuming on a day-to-day basis. Because when you go to school, you're in a very structured, system where like every 45 minutes you're switching rooms, switching classes, you're learning about something else, your consumption schedule, for lack of a better term, is all outlined and set up for you by teachers and by people who are experts in exactly what they want to be teaching. As adults, we don't really have that, but I kind of think there's something to be said for having that structured consumption time where you're very aware of how long you're consuming things and also what you're consuming. I think, as you guys probably know, if you've been listening for the last few weeks, I took a social media break in August, and that was actually my second break of the year where I chose to log off of Instagram and TikTok for the week. And I plan to do a third break before the end of the year. And every time I do this, it always reminds me that, like, I don't need these apps to exist. It's just I end up spending quite a lot of time on them, somewhat for work. And then also, obviously, because I'm a human being, I like a dopamine hit just as much as the next gal. And when I'm scrolling and being fed content constantly, that's very easy to achieve. However, it always makes me think more when I return to the apps about how much time I'm spending on them and also like who I'm choosing to follow and what exactly I'm spending my time there doing. So, one thing that you might consider taking away from more of a traditional education system is adding time limits to the amount of time that you spend scrolling. And I'm not here to tell anyone to not go on TikTok and scroll for an hour. Like, I've certainly done that before and I will do it again in the future. I have no doubt. But it even just makes you think about like what else you could be doing with your time. Like in the spring, my nephew had a piano recital and he is 8 for context. And obviously, I thought he was the best and most talented one there. But there were a lot of kids who were similar ages who were playing some crazy stuff, like who really just were like playing things that I think professionals would even struggle to play. And I was like thinking to myself, it's because they're putting the time into this. And it's not like I don't have time to learn how to play piano really well. And I used to take piano lessons, but if you sat me down right now, I'd be very confused because of how long it's been since I last played. And it just made me think like there's so much that you could be doing with your time. I mean, Edward from Twilight doesn't sleep, right? And he knows how to play piano and he speaks all these different languages because he literally doesn't sleep. Obviously, we don't have infinite time and we need to sleep unless you're a vampire listening, in which case, hello, please DM me. I have some questions. But taking a week off of Instagram or going to your nephew's piano recital and watching young kids play like intense classical symphonies makes you think about how you're spending your time. So maybe try the time limits feature on Instagram and TikTok. I believe both apps have them built in. And you could always like extend the time limit if you need to, but I think it does make you think more about how much time you're spending on them, the same way that people always say when you pay in cash, you can actually like see the money leaving your hand and going somewhere else. I avoid paying for things in cash whenever possible because A, I like credit card points, and B, who carries cash? But I think the metaphor still translates here. And then also just consuming intentionally, like mute, block, unsubscribe from any accounts that are causing you stress or just not serving you or you feel like you're comparing yourself to. I'm a huge fan of the mute feature because no one ever has to know that they are muted for you, and you can go choose to engage with them when you want to. I actually have gotten to the point now where I have a good majority of people I follow muted on stories, and that alone has saved me a ton of time. And it's not because I don't want to watch their stories. It's just like being realistic of all the hours I have in the day, of all the ways I could be spending my time. How important is it for me to know that you had a ham sandwich for lunch? If there's some really big monumental announcement of some kind, like life changing news, I assume that I will find out about it somehow. I also just love choosing to follow creators who I feel like give a lot back to me and make it a valuable use of my time to like spend time with them and watch their content. One example of this is I've been loving following this creator, Julia Broom, lately. She's a social media coach, strategist. I don't even know what to call her because she honestly just feels like a social media friend. And I love the way she explains everything. Like, I've been a content creator for 13 years. I don't not know the stuff that she's talking about, but the way she explains it makes me think about it differently. And that is where the value comes from. I've been loving spending time with her virtually, and I also love Jules Acree. She's just such like an intentional creator. I love her YouTube videos specifically, and I learn a ton from her, even though she's a lifestyle creator and she's not sitting here going, step one, step two, here's how you blah, blah, blah. It's just sprinkled into her existing content in a way where I walk away being like, oh, I didn't know that before, or oh, I should try that sometime. And it doesn't feel like it was forced. And I think that is the beauty of being able to consume content in a way where we have free will and we get to decide what we consume compared to, a typical learning structure in school where you're just being told what the syllabus says you're going to learn that day. So that's something I think a lot about. I also think, like, as adults, even if you don't go back to school, even if you're not interested in getting your MBA or your PhD or whatever the other acronyms are, you could always like take an online class or even like build your own kind of curriculum in a sense too. Like there's so much free information out online these days. There are also programs like Skillshare, there's Masterclass. YouTube even has courses built in now too. Like you could find courses that are hosted on YouTube. I personally also sell digital workshops and courses. I have a digital workshop all about SEO to help people feel confident about getting their blogs and YouTube channels set up to be discovered in the search results. And then I also have my digital course, the Influencer Income Accelerator, where I teach influencers how to start and scale passive income streams. And those are all things that I just like invented from my own brain and put out online, and people actually buy, which is so crazy. I can link both my SEO workshop and my digital course in the show notes if either are of interest to you guys. Or even something like just getting Duolingo on your phone. I keep breaking my Spanish streak. I had like a 700-day streak, and that's long gone. I think it happened sometime when we went to Italy, so I keep having to like restart and revamp my streak. So I'm only at like 14 days or something right now, but I have been using Duolingo to just kind of keep little Spanish phrases in my head. I know that this is not getting me to fluency necessarily, but at least it is giving me the capability to communicate in Spanish when and if I need to. I would also love to actually like take Spanish classes again someday. I really like every time I go abroad, it just reminds me that in some ways we are very fortunate that English is a universal language, and in other ways it just has meant that we haven't had as much of a necessity to learn a different language. And especially when I was at my friend Nora's wedding and everyone was speaking like French, Italian, and Spanish in addition to English, and almost everyone seemed to somehow understand each other, even if they didn't fully speak the language. That was something I got severe FOMO from, like that I wished I could fully participate in. So I would love to be able to get to a point of being fluent in Spanish. I just think it would be so useful. And I also just think that, the world does not revolve around the United States. And even within the United States, Spanish is the second most spoken language here. Like, it's kind of crazy that more people don't speak it. And, while you're doing your learning, make it enjoyable. Light a candle, get your favorite beverage, get a cute pen and a notebook to take notes. Like, you can make it however much of a vibe that you want it to. I also think one of the best parts of school was clubs and extracurriculars. Now, in high school, I really overdid it. I was in so many different clubs. I was on student government. I was one of the editors of our literary magazine. I was like a tour guide. I played soccer. I was in plays. Like, I was never without an activity, essentially. And actually, the summer after I graduated high school, when I finally had nothing to do, was when I started my blog. So I think that tells you everything that you need to know about me. However, I think that socializing and extracurriculars are things that are not very obviously presented to us as an adult unless you work for an office that's like, hey guys, there's our monthly happy hour at like 6 p.m. on this day. And you're just like, I don't necessarily want to go to that. So I think that there are tons of opportunities for adults to participate and have that sense of community and have that weekly or monthly meeting that they can look forward to with a group of people. You could join or form your own book club. My friend Lauren had mentioned a book club a few years ago at an event that she was at, and I was like, can I join that? She was like, sure. And then I was in book club. It was not rocket science. It kind of just came up one day. You could also look for a local organization that you could volunteer at. I always forget to mention this, but I'm going to mention it now because we still have a few weeks. If you have ever wanted to attend New York Fashion Week and you feel like you have no fashion connections or experience, offer to volunteer. Like, people really need help during the week, whether it's actually backstage, whether it's with a brand, whether it's with an influencer or content creator who might need help capturing content. Again, we're not like saving lives here or anything, but like if that's something you're interested and passionate about, it can be a great way to get your foot in the door, to meet new people, to get a little bit of experience, especially if you're like in college or recently post grad. I always forget to mention that. So hopefully there's still maybe some opportunities available. And I would check on like threads for stuff like that too. I feel like I've been seeing a lot of opportunities posted on threads recently. Or you could also do volunteering with a more established organization. So I think a lot of you know I started volunteering with the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network in 2024, I guess, like at the end of the year. We lost Andrew's dad to pancreatic cancer in March of 2024. And by the end of the year, I had gone from feeling helpless to feeling more like, okay, I kind of want to like do something now. And I volunteered with them for their Purple Stride event, which was in April and is in April every year, everywhere, essentially. Like it's a bunch of different cities will host their own Purple Stride events, which is basically a walk to end pancreatic cancer. So it's a big fundraising event. And the volunteering mainly revolved around the event day. I did do some, phone calls and things like that leading up to it. I offered to reach out to like some media contacts that I knew. We also did like some group outings and stuff. And it was really amazing to meet other people whose families had been through like a similar situation to ours. So I do think that volunteering and giving back to your community is extremely important. I would love to like continue to do that. Obviously, I'm still volunteering with PanCan, and I would love to find other even like local organizations to volunteer with too. Also, a lot of cities and towns have like intramural sports leagues or things that you can sign up for. Hoboken has something called Hive Athletic that I've heard really good things about. You could also join an online community. I know my friend Kristen, who hosts the podcast Social Scoop, has a whole online community of other content creators called Social Suite. And that is actually like a hybrid of education and an extracurricular. And I have a friend who's in this group who has said that she's created like an accountability pod from this group and that they're always there to answer questions. They do live Q&A sessions, things like that. And for me, I'm someone who I have a lot more fun socializing and like doing my extracurriculars after I've kind of taken care of everything that I need to get done first. Just meaning, like, I know myself better than to make dinner plans during New York Fashion Week because there's probably going to be work and things that come up that I want to make sure I take care of before committing to that. And to round out this episode, I thought I would just share for fun a couple of back to school, shows, books, movies, and things like that to get you in the mood if you're not there already. And I really want to read more this fall. I'm sure that I will now that kind of summer is slowing down and I can get back into a routine, like I said. So, two fall reads that I have on my list are The Ministry of Time, which is I read the first 15 pages of, and I honestly stopped and I was like, I need to save this for fall. I think it was just a lot more like the vibe. It's a sci-fi book, though, about time travel, and I really don't want to say any more than that, even though I'm only 15 pages in and couldn't spoil this book if I wanted to because I don't know what happens. And then also Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is still on my TBR for this year. I have it on the bookshelf back there. I'm determined to read it this fall. And this is a book that I believe at least starts at Harvard and starts with friends who kind of get together and start working on this side project. And no, it's not about Facebook, just to clarify. And then as far as TV shows, we've got the double G's ready and here to deliver. So I would specifically recommend Gossip Girl seasons 1 and 2. I feel like their high school era is the quintessential back to school. I mean, I shouldn't say it's the quintessential back to school because barely anyone that I know was like sleeping with their teachers and doing drugs and blackmailing other students to prevent them from getting into the Ivy League school of their choice. But it's quintessential for me to watch. Let's just say that. And then there's Gilmore Girls. Like, no one loves school more than Rory Gilmore, especially in the early seasons. So I would also highly recommend that. And then for movies, I really have two recommendations that are just like fun and lighthearted. One is She's the Man, possibly one of my favorite movies of all time, and based on Twelfth Night by Shakespeare. Bet you weren't expecting to be involved with Shakespeare in this episode, right? But here's one degree of separation to Shakespeare through Amanda Bynes, of course. And also Legally Blonde. Like, if you need motivation to do something and to do it in a cute, girly, but still very badass way, there's no one better than Elle Woods to guide us to where we want to be. Let me know how you're embracing the back to school mindset. You can leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. You can also leave a comment if you're listening on Spotify. Send me an email, follow us on Instagram, and I will talk to you guys again next week.